Welcome back. This is going to be the first of 5 videos on photography. This video, the first one, will be about my journey to this point and what cameras I've chosen and equipment and what I use. In the second video, I'm going to go do a photo shoot. We'll go out and take photos, and I will explain the settings I use and the different lenses I use and why I've chosen those settings for each photograph. With the third video, I will describe the process by which I manage my photos, both for personal and professional use. In the fourth video, I will cover the different apps that I use, showing you some unusual ones which have come in handy over the years. And then in the last video, I will cover file formats, picture file formats. They can be very confusing to people. Hopefully I can help sort that out. So, where did this all begin? Well, way back when I was 14, I think it was 1969, a friend of the family gave me a 35mm Nikkor camera. And you have to understand, back then, cameras like that, a young boy my age generally didn't have a camera like that. I mean, I had to save up for weeks, sometimes months in end with my pocket money to be able to buy the film, and then also to pay the processing. And I was lucky to get about 24 prints out of each one. So suffice to say that as a result of how much it cost and for buying the film and processing it, I very quickly adapted to the manual settings on the camera and learned how to be very efficient with it to make sure that I got good value for my money. And as a result, over the years, I have had successive SLR cameras. I think at one stage I had Pentax ME Super, which I think I bought back in the early 80s and used that for many, many years. Up until I think the first digital cameras came on the scene and I started to experiment with them. Moving on, let me explain the camera system I use today and how that came about. So I want to be crystal clear about this. Over the last 5, maybe even 10 years, all of the major camera manufacturers have brought out models that have, I would suggest, are equal in respect to the quality of the pictures that they produce. I think the difference is in the style of the camera themselves in respect to the actual hardware, the design of the bodies, the design of the lenses, design of the controls, and even the menu systems on board. And the reason I'm pointing this out is that I did choose a specific brand, and I'll show you what that is in a minute. But I wanted to just make sure that this is not about saying this camera is the best. It is the best for me, that suits me. Okay? So, if you look on the screen at the moment, you'll see 5 cameras. And I've chosen one system out of them. So let's start. With this one up here, the Sunny, I just didn't like the design, the body shape, where they put the controls, and the menu system. Oh my God, yeah. It just didn't suit me. So I've discarded Sunny. Over here, I have a Nikon, and again, for the same sort of reasons, I found the Nikon wanting in a number of areas. I didn't like the hand grip. I found it really uncomfortable. The menu system was slightly better than the Sunny, but still not up to scratch for what I wanted. And again, the controls seem to be in odd places. Next, over here in this corner, we have the Olympus. Now, it's a good camera, but it's an APC sensor, and That's fine, because the camera I originally chose was an APC, but this one was the way they did things with that sensor I didn't like. So again, I discounted it. Again, not to say these are bad cameras, they're good cameras, they just didn't suit me. Then we had Fuji over here in this corner. Well, the Fuji camera, great camera, technically, but they seem to be on some sort of a retro kick, and I'll be honest with you, I just could not take to where they set the controls up and just the basic look of the cameras and feel. So I'm sorry, I discounted them. That leaves me with the Canon, and yes, it was the Canon I chose. The Canon 70D, this one, which is on the screen, which was the first digital SLR that I purchased. Well, I've only had two, so it was the first, and it has lasted for, well, sorry, it's lasted for a long time. I bought it back in 2013, and I used it both professionally and personally for 5 years, and then in 2018 I ended up switching over to a mirrorless camera, which was the Canon EOS R. Now, I do want to make a comment about this. For some time, I had niggling doubts about the mirrorless range of cameras on all different makes, because I was under the impression that the digital SLR system was the best. You just couldn't beat it because you were looking through the lens. It wasn't until one day I was down at a camera shop and I picked up the EOS R, and I looked through it and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, technology had, reached a point where I felt as if I was looking through the lens, the image that I could see. But the game changer that I learned about was the fact that the image that I was seeing. Hang on, let's go back a step. So in the past with the digital SLRs, I was looking through the lens, but I had to make decisions about the quality of the final image based on a meter, and obviously experience, knowing what shutter speeds and so forth. With the EOS R, this was the thing that blew my mind, was that if I suddenly realised I was overexposing the picture, I didn't have to worry about the meter. I can just literally alter it and I could see the change. I could even change the colour temperature and see the change. So if I was underexposed, overexposed, in essence, I could basically see the end result while I was shooting. With one difference, the one thing that you couldn't see is your depth of field. At the moment, they haven't come up with a way to show you that in the mirrorless system. But, I mean, I already knew what the depth of field is going to be like relative to different settings, which I'll explain later. Anyway, I then decided to go with the EOS R and have not looked back. I love the camera. Canon have released newer models over the years. The EOS R5 is one I really like. Actually, the R5C is the one I lust after, and I'll explain that another time. But that's an incredible camera. But considering the fact that both those cameras are well over $6,000 each, there's no way I'm going to consider it. Never. I mean, the reality is the EOS R that I have now works brilliantly. It does such a good job. Yeah. I think I'll be using this camera for many, many years to come. And I may as well show you. So here we go. There's that's the 70D. And as a result of buying this camera over the years, I've built up a number of lenses. And the one here, which I'll show on the screen, is the EFS 18-135. And that became my workhorse lens. It was an incredible range. So you think about it, 18 gave me massive wide angle, and then up to 135 gave me, really good zoom. And with a can't remember. I think look at it with an f-stop of 1.4 to 5.6. It's not bad. And on modern cameras, the even though 5.6 would be considered slow in years gone past, with the ISOs you can get these days, that's a good lens. Second to that, I then bought my favourite lens. This is the EF L series 70 to 300. Magnificent lens. Magnificent zoom lens, and that's got a same thing, F point, actually. Let's have a look. Oh no, sorry, it's on here. There we go. Yeah, 1.4 to 5.6 over the range. Very, very good lens. I also purchased an EFS 24mm prime lens. Prime lenses are fantastic. I mean, this is a let's have a look. It's a 1.3. That's a fast lens. Anyway, as I said, I then got the EOS R, and here it is with the 24 to 240 lens, and now this is my go-to setup. I use this lens almost for everything. And I also own the 50mm prime and 16mm prime for wide angle. Oh, and by the way, going back to the EF mounts on the 70D, I also have a 10 to 18 EFS 10 to 18mm wide angle lens, zoom wide angle lens. This is phenomenal. This gives me so much range if you ever want wide angle. It is also, that's a 1.4 to 5.6 range as well. Now, this is the great thing. The EOS R comes with a different lens system, the RF. But with a lens adapter like this, mounted on that camera, I can put all of this EF glass on this camera. And as a result, I've got a phenomenal range of lenses and two good cameras. I mean, I still use the 70D. This camera came in handy recently. I had a problem with this. I had to send it off to Canon, and I had a job come up, and I took this out. I used the 70 to 300 lens. It was a social event, and I couldn't get near the people. I was able to get some awesome shots. No one knew the difference. As far as I was concerned, they were coming from a professional, and with this camera or this camera, it didn't matter. Anyway, so there you go. Okay, so let's just give you a brief introduction to manual shooting. I mean, you may not want to do that, that's fine, but I'm telling you that you're going to get your best pictures if you master the manual operation of your camera. So if you look on the screen now, there's a diagram called the exposure triangle. And on that triangle, it details the three main settings that involve your camera. You have your aperture, you have shutter, and you have ISO. So with aperture, we are talking about the actual lens iris, and it's how much light it lets into the camera. Talking about light, I'm just losing the light now. The cloud's gone over. Anyway, with your shutter, you're talking about the speed of the shutter in fractions of a second. So, for instance, if you're at 125, you're 125th part, or does it say 125th of a second? Or if you're down to, say, a fifth of a second, it'll say 5. And with the ISO is the light range. It allows how much light is allowed into the sensor. And its main purpose is to, as you get into lower light settings, you'll raise the ISO. Now, like everything in life, there's a balance, and when you do that, you'll introduce more grain. Saying that, with modern digital cameras, you can get away with pretty high ISOs. I can shoot up to probably 4,000 ISO, and you can hardly see the grain, so that's not bad. So with the triangle, depending upon what range of settings you use will depend upon the look of the final photograph. For instance, if you look at the picture on the screen at the moment, you will see we have an aperture of f1.4, a shutter speed of 125 and an ISO of 200. This combination gives a very clear, sharp foreground in focus, with the background very much a blur. And the exposure is just right. We also have a good shutter speed, which is fast enough to catch a sharp image with a little camera movement. And lastly, a low ISO setting, giving us a very clean image without much grain. Now look at this image with different settings. In this case, we have a shutter speed of 1/5 of a second, an aperture of f22, and an ISO of 1000. You will see a dramatic difference with both the foreground and background in focus. Because of the lighting conditions, these were the settings required to get this, and I had to use a tripod to eliminate any camera shake to take the picture. We had to go up to 1000 ISO. In modern cameras, anything below 4000 ISO will have very minimal gain. Now, in the third image, we have another different group of settings, which are aperture of f11, a shutter speed of a 15th of a second, and an ISO of 1000. So what we did was change the shutter speed and the f-stop, but maintain the ISO. And we were able to keep the same exposure, but change the depth of field a little. After viewing these, there's one thing that you might have noticed, and it does catch a lot of new photographers out. You'll notice that with the f-stop, right, so we have an f-stop of, say, 1.4. That is going to let the most amount of light into the camera. And an f-stop of, say, 32 would allow the smallest amount. But if you notice that the numbering system is reversed to the actual iris, so, you have 1.4, which is a very small number, has the largest iris opening. Conversely, the f32, which is a large number, has the very smallest iris number opening. There is a technical reason for this, and I'm not going to go into it. It's fairly long-winded, and it's not relevant. It's just something you've got to learn to understand, and just keep that in mind. So look, there's my journey so far, and with a breakdown of the cameras and the equipment I've used, with the lenses and so forth. I think I'll leave it at that for the moment, and just look out for the next video when we do a photo shoot, and we'll actually show you the types of photographs I take and what settings I use and why. Thanks for watching. Bye.